People skills, in particular leadership, is a crucial component in the pursuit of goals and the achievement of things and living well. Let's face it, if we have poor relationships, if we are abrasive in our engagements with other people, if we are intolerant, if we are short and abrupt and maybe even a bit nasty, narcissistic, high on that trait of personality, and we're intolerant of others, and if we believe others are inherently, selfish and in it for themselves, and they need to be pushed around and motivated by us, well, we're in trouble. And there's no doubt you can win in the world of business being this way. In fact, the world of business loves people like this, completely self-centered. It's a bit of an irony there, isn't there? Some of the most successful business people are highly self-centered, and their core belief, or one of their core beliefs, is that you're self-centered, or you're selfish, and that you're in it for yourself because that's how they are. And so what they believe about themselves is reflected out into the world. So my point is, you can be successful materially if this is your approach to the world, but in relationships you won't be. You can have all the material things you want, but people will only hang around insofar as they can get something from you. And that's what we're talking about today, talking about leadership, but not only leadership in the sense of leading other people, but leading oneself and living a healthy and happy, fulfilling life, and why it requires people skills. We're on day 11 of 30 days of mental skills, psychological skills, and we're going to be on this. Let me pull this graphic down here so those of you who are watching YouTube shorts or TikTok videos or something like that can see what I'm talking about. So you can see from the framework here, we're on people skills, which is around about 3 o'clock on the clock. We're moving clockwise around this framework, and people skills is really important, because without the ability to work with others and get on with other people and work on a team and collaborate, well, you're kind of screwed, especially if you're trying to run a business, if you're trying to build a team, if you're a head coach, or you're a coach in a team, or maybe you're a captain on a team, you're trying to be successful as a unit. You need to be able to get on with other people, and if you don't have that ability, well, you're in trouble. Now, you can through this kind of narrow, self-centered, narcissistic approach to people, force people to conform, to do what you want under threat of punishment. Remember what I was talking to you about a few days ago on motivation? So you are, in effect, if this is your leadership approach, you are an extrinsic motivator for these people. And so while the boss is around, and while the threat of reprimand exists, people will do what you want them to do, but only when the situation is calm and normal. If the situation is not calm and normal, people forced to deliver will invariably come up short. Why is that? Well, because in novel situations where the stakes are high and intensity is high, and the risk of loss is high, people who are forced to comply, forced by you to do what you want them to do, will not have the creative and innovative capacity to come up with a solution. So think of a scenario. I'll give you a sporting scenario, because I think sport is a lovely analogy for life and for business. So if you're the manager of a team, head coach on a team, and your modus operandi is beat your players into submission, almost force them under threat of reprimand to play well, when the stakes are high and you're in a competition, they might be good players, they might be skillful, they might be, under ordinary conditions produce the results and you'll win games. But when the pressure's on, and in the last 5 or 10 minutes of a game, or they have to come up against this novel threat that exists on the field, they won't come up with a solution because the thought, the belief, which is now embedded, right? The thought and belief that they'll be reprimanded for making mistakes, it doesn't allow them be creative. And so, to look at the flip side of that, if you are understanding of other people, if you recognize that people invariably do try their best, if you believe that they are self motivated, if you believe that they have the capacity to find a solution, if you create the environment where people can be creative and not have the fear of making a mistake, where they can experiment, where they can try new things and be okay about it, the chances are when the stakes are high and you need them to respond, they'll produce the goods. It's the same in business. If you have a workforce that are beaten into submission, if you only want them to do what they're told to do on command, well, in a novel situation, they won't be able to come up with a solution. Market threats exist. The business environment is changing rapidly. Your banging on the table will be worthless. They won't be able to produce the goods, which is why you see this constant boom and bust in companies. Organizations tend to hire people, who are flamboyant, who are impressive, charismatic, and so forth. They command the room. They may be a bit of a taskmaster. All right. I have to admit, I'm chagrined to admit, I was one of these, and I know from experience that it doesn't work. However, I learned the hard way. But you don't have to. If you run a team, if you have ambitions to be a team leader or a business owner or run a successful sports team or whatever, you need to nurture a culture and environment of creative expression. You want people who can come up with something unique and fantastic when the moment requires it. And you won't get that if you're beating your people into submission and reprimanding them every time they make a mistake. What are mistakes after all? They're merely attempts to do something different. Now, if you have people working on an assembly line in a factory and all they're doing all day is putting widgets together and putting them in boxes and stacking them away, well, maybe your kind of dogged Theory X approach. Theory Y is the opposite. It's a framework by, I think it was McClelland from around the 60s. I can't remember exactly. But it's a way of explaining this kind of dualistic approach to leadership. One is a dogmatic, dictatorial approach to leadership. The other is an open and encouraging, creative space creating approach to leadership. Research has often referred to it as authentic leadership. There are other terms that are used. But kind of lost my train of track now, but a train of thought. But however, the situation is, if you want to be successful in work or in sport or in any environment where people are involved, you've got to be capable of doing what needs to be done when nobody's looking for a start. You've got to be willing to put the blinkers on and get down and do the work, but also be able to remove them and take a look at the landscape. You've got to be able to understand what motivates people, how to get the best from people, to find the benefit in the failure. Unless you're able to do that, when novel, challenging, high-stakes circumstances arise, you and your people won't be able to come up with the answers. That's it, long story short. I've got some references for you in today's session below the video. And if you're watching on YouTube or elsewhere, you can click on the link and it'll take you to the post on Substack where you can read more. A fellow called Jim Collins, researcher in business and management, did some research in the 80s and early 90s on what makes a company successful. what allows an organization go from good to great, go from ordinary run-of-the-mill, following the kind of growth levels of the S&P to outperforming the S&P. Well, long story short, he found that there's a particular type of character, a particular type of leadership required to make that happen. And that particular type of leadership is unassuming, is somewhat introverted in its approach. It doesn't necessarily seek the limelight. It's highly competitive. It wants success, but it's not out for success for itself only. So the individual, the leader, this good to great leader that Jim Collins describes in his book from 2001. In fact, I have it here. Let me get it. This is it here. Good to great, Jim Collins. Why some companies make the leap and others don't. Really good read, interesting research. You can check out his site, jimcollins.com, I believe it is. So the unassuming, somewhat introverted, not necessarily charismatic, doesn't necessarily seek the limelight, is interested in other people doing well as themselves and the organization, are highly competitive, mind you. Some people seem to think that competitiveness requires you to be a bad bastard, but that's not true. And Jim Collins shows why that's the case. I'm probably going to talk a little bit more about this kind of theory X and Y of leadership, and the dualistic view that people are either, not very motivated, they're lazy, and they need to be whipped into shape, or the other side of the coin is that they are self-motivated and will do what they need to do in order to achieve something. This kind of dualistic model is an interesting way to examine leadership. And it's important to understand this if we're looking to build a team, a successful team in sport, on the stage, in business, and so on. And it's a core aspect of mental skills, psychological skills, one of 9. And tomorrow and the next day, I'm going to continue this conversation around people skills. I'm going to get into emotional intelligence. Goldman made this famous in around the 90s again. So we talk about emotional intelligence and what that is, and why it can't be feigned, why it can't be created out of thin air, why it comes about as a particular consequence of living a life, and one or two other topics we'll get into. Working with people is important, and if you can't do that successfully, well, you may not be very successful in your own career. People skills is part of the 9 mental skills that I'm discussing over these 30 days. If you want to learn more about this, you want to get in depth into this topic, check out the link below. Essential Mental Skills is a program I'm building. And if you want to be a part of that and find out more about it, click on the link and register, and I'll let you know. Until tomorrow, that's all I've got for now. Trying to keep these clips under 15 minutes. Hope you appreciate that. Little nuggets of kind of information that I've managed to gather from my own career in business and management and so on, and also from the world of psychology and the stuff that I teach in work and organizational psychology. It applies across the board. All right. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow. Mind yourselves.